After 2 months, Lane Kiffin finally meets with reporters. Our biggest takeaways from what he said, that's next. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe as always. One of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Thank you for checking us out every single weekday on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network as well. Hey, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. So Lane Kiffin on Wednesday met with reporters for the first time since his introductory press conference, December the 1st. So Lane got to Baton Rouge on that Sunday. He's introduced on that Monday, December the 1st. Does not meet reporters again, does not have any media availability. The only interview he's done was that in-game interview during the bowl game on December the 27th on ESPN. Yes, the game where he showed up in Houston, did that TV interview, and then went back to Baton Rouge, and a lot of people were up in a tizzy. But this was an opportunity for Lane Kiffin to meet with reporters to discuss the high school signing class, the transfer portal class, the staff additions that he has made, general state of the program as well. And I'm going to go ahead and guess that this is the last time we're going to hear from Lane Kiffin until spring football begins. Now, we hear from Lane Kiffin all the time because he is always active on Twitter. And that's how he communicates. He communicates to the world through social media, not through traditional means like press conferences. So we're all going to have to get used to this. But one thing Lane Kiffin did say as he started his press conference was he complimented his new staff and the job they did in building this roster, which, after the 2 additions on Wednesday, the traditional February signing date, right? They added Adrian Lamb, the JUCO offensive lineman, and Jackson Williams, the defensive back, the safety from Shaw in New Orleans. 18 high school signees, 42 transfer portal additions, 60 new players on the LSU football team. And Lane Kiffin complimented his staff on the job they did.
Our staff did a really good job in a very challenging situation. Luckily, we were recruiting to LSU and all the great things with that made us able to put together this class, but that was a challenging time. Been discussed before, the calendar is what it is, and to try and put together a staff at the same time as trying to keep the current players immediately before the portal opened as they were preparing for a bowl game with the previous staff, and then just kind of uncharted waters by our staff, a number of our staff, offensively going back and forth between the playoff run at the last place and then trying to put together this group here.
One of the things that you will probably decipher throughout a lot of these conversations that Lane's having, that I'm going to mention, is Lane Kiffin is very transparent. He may not say a lot. He may not give you long, winding, thorough answers, but he's to the point. He's going to be transparent. And throughout that answer, he categorized a lot of the things that we all talked about, that some coaches may say, well, that's an excuse. Lane straight up talked about it. It's a hard thing to do. You had coaches going back and forth, competing for a playoff, trying to recruit a roster, all the stuff that went into it. The other thing that he consistently says that I think LSU fans are really going to like is he refuses to say Ole Miss. You heard him say at the last place we were at. He said before where we were before. I can recruit here relative to where we were. He doesn't say Ole Miss. He refuses to say those words, which is interesting. But I think that's also very intentional to not say Ole Miss. I don't know if He doesn't want to say it because he fears it could be a knock, perceived as a knock to Ole Miss, or he just doesn't want to mention their name because what's the old adage? Any publicity is good publicity. So when you mention their name, people are hearing it. But I thought that was interesting. Now, probably the biggest takeaway from this transfer portal class, aside from the money, the NIL, which we're going to get to, by the way, is when Lane Kiffin is the numbers, right? You took 42 players in the transfer portal and then 18 in the high school class, but 42 in the portal. That volume is a lot. Remember, in his 3 seasons at Ole Miss, Lane went from 20 to 23 to you kept increasing the number of portal additions that he had at Ole Miss. So you're talking about, getting to 30 as a high watermark at Ole Miss after 4 years of increasing in their portal cycle from 20, 23, 26, 30. Well, you signed 42. That's a 25% increase. Or I guess a 30% increase from what you had done at Ole Miss. And certainly the heaviest class that Kelly signed was a year ago with 18. Now you went to 42. So here was Kiffin talking about the volume, the number of guys they signed.
We had a lot to replace, by coming in. And part of that is some players' decisions to move on, maybe because we felt a certain way of the previous staff versus the direction we were going. And part of that is our decisions, too. And so in those evaluations, usually come in to make a lot of changes. And especially if the program made a change, and fired a staff because they didn't like the direction of the football program, which is what happened. So I know at first there was a lot of skepticism about so many players going in the portal, but I just looked at it and it was like, okay, what's my answer to you as the fans and media too if we just kept the same players? I mean, we are good coaches, I think, but we also don't have magic dust too, so we changed a lot because there needed to be changes.
Remember what I said about transparency? We changed a lot because there needed to be changes. We're good coaches, but what if we didn't change any of the players? LSU went 7-6. LSU went 7-6. And in that 7-6, look at all the guys that didn't leave your program, but that were out of eligibility. Garrett Nussmeier, out of eligibility. Berrien Brown, Aaron Anderson, Xavier Thomas, Bauer Sharp, your starting tight end. All these guys are out of eligibility. Jack Pyburn, Jamari Butler, Bernard Gooden, Jacobian Guillory, Patrick Payton, AJ Halsey. These aren't guys that chose to leave your program. They're out of eligibility. And then Mansour Delane, going Harold Perkins, out of eligibility. Mansour Delane going pro. Like, the guys that left were a lot of depth pieces. And I really, really admire what Lane Kiffin said, because he said some of these were player decisions. Maybe they didn't like, this new staff comes in, they were recruited by the old staff. And so you have a change in staff philosophy. Maybe it doesn't gel, so they leave. Okay. And then he says some of it was our decision, meaning the staff. Like, this is something that you and I, all of us, intuitively know happens. Players get cut or purged or processed. Like, use whatever phrasing you want, whatever verbiage you want. But we all know that's part of this, where there are guys on the roster who aren't invited back. They're told, you don't fit, you're not going to play, we don't have a spot for you, you need to leave. And I know when LSU's offensive line turnover was so robust and LSU lost 8 guys on the offensive line, there was a lot of sort of panic from LSU fans by and large. I've heard it, I felt it, I saw it from many of you. And the thing I kept saying over again was the weakest unit on your team was the offensive line. And that was unanimous. We all knew it. So do you really want to double down and getting all of those guys to return? Now, are there players who maybe could have stayed and developed and grown and been better? Sure, but what LSU prioritized was Braylon Moore. I've told you there were 6 players they prioritized, 3 on offense, 3 on defense. 3 offensive guys were Harlan Berry, Trey Green, and Braylon Moore. Well, they retained the guys they wanted to retain. But I love the transparency to say some of it was players maybe not gelling with the new staff, what our vision was. Some of it was our decision, I mean, the coach's decision not to retain a guy. So we know that happens, but here you have a head coach saying it. Yeah, we cut, purged, processed guys because we needed that spot and we didn't think they could fit. I think a huge part of that is true in the positions you saw turnover at offensive line and wide receiver. So bringing in now 10 new offensive linemen shows what the position of the purpose was. And look, we can go down the list and look at player for player, guys on that offensive line that weren't playing. Would you prefer Ethan Callaway or Darren Stray? Well, both are guys that signed with SEC schools, didn't play as freshmen. Callaway was here. Now he's transferred. He's at Wake Forest. Stray was at Kentucky. They brought him here. Well, his position coach in Kentucky was Eric Wolford. Brought him with him to Baton Rouge. Do you trust Eric Wolford's evaluation? I do. Why wouldn't you? Kentucky's had a lot of success recruiting and developing offensive linemen. So you look at it in those ways, and it starts to make a lot more sense about the volume. Now, the real question is, can all these guys gel? And that's a very legitimate question. And I don't know the answer, and we'll find out that answer in due time. But the bottom line is they had to go replace a ton of dudes, and a lot of those players they're replacing, it was their decision, this staff's decision to replace him. And you'll have to take my word for it. Lane Kiffin told you because he will be transparent. Now, they also had to go rebuild the quarterback room, and Lane Kiffin would dive into that on Wednesday, and we'll jump into it as we continue here. Locked on LSU, your team every day.
I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. Number 1 ranked UConn dominated Tennessee 96-66, turning a halftime tie into a historic win and avenging last season's loss by delivering the largest margin in the rivalry's history. AZ Fudd had 27 points and Sarah Strong added 26 as the Huskies remain perfect on the season, reminding everyone why they are the reigning national champions. In the Big Ten, number 2 UCLA rolled past number 8 Iowa 88-65, powered by 22 points from Angela Dukeledge and a huge advantage in the paint, staking their claim as a national threat. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Want to delve back into the show and specifically Lane Kiffin talking about rebuilding his quarterback room. But let me thank you again for making Locked On LSU your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you have not already, please go check out our new Everydayer Club. It gives you access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On LSU, compatible with Apple, Spotify, and all the major podcast apps, and an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. So tap the link in the show notes if you'd like to learn more. Yes, LSU added more than 40 players via the transfer portal, and yes, they had to go rebuild that quarterback room. They added, Garrett Nussmeier's out of eligibility, Michael Van Buren, Colin Hurley hit the transfer portal. You were out of scholarship quarterbacks. You did not sign a high school quarterback in either of the last 2 classes, all things you know. So the Tigers added Sam Leavitt, Husan Longstreet, and Landon Clark. Lane Kiffin is A-okay with how this room looks right now.
Really pleased about what we were able to do there because, again, like I talked about, I think a huge key is, how do you put together the whole roster in this world that's in outlet? There's a salary that's involved. And so I think one of the mistakes that's been made over time is people focus so top heavy that they go get these top players, but then they don't really do a good job of necessarily having really good evaluations of the 2s and the 3s that make your program better by how you practice, but also eventually play at times. I think the previous place you're at, there's a really good quarterback story that wasn't even there this time a year ago. And then our evaluation process of always grinding, always trying to find players, find a quarterback that, doesn't come until the summer in the second window. And that story is what it is. So that's why, as you look at this, I thought this was really critical what we did here, the quarterback position.
I love that he talked about the necessity of the 2s and 3s, not just the top level guys. By the way, we're going to get to that as well when we talk about how NIL factored into this portal class. Maybe I'm burying the lead because maybe the most fascinating answer Lane Kiffin gave in this entire press conference was when he was asked about the NIL impact on this portal class. We're going to get to that in a second. But by the way, you heard him again say the place we were at. He will not say Ole Miss. He will not say those words, which probably drives Ole Miss fans crazy. He was talking about Trinidad Chambliss. He will not say Trinidad Chambliss. He will not say Ole Miss. He'll say the place we're at, quarterback. But again, if you're an everydayer, and shout out to our everydayers, and some of this, I know some of this sounds repetitive, but in doing so, what I'm hoping to achieve is not only planting these seeds, but like deeply rooting these pretenses in you as an LSU fan, in what Lane Kiffin sees and how he views building his program. I'm not telling you it's 100% infallible going to work. I don't know. We'll see. They haven't played a game. They'll play Clemson on Labor Day weekend 8 months from now. But the point is, this is all going to be sort of how this coach and his staff build the roster. And you heard him say there as well, their evaluation process when he was talking about Trinidad Chambliss. That is the thing they keep hammering down on. Yes, it is easy to go look at Sam Leavitt and say, number one quarterback in the portal, let's go get him. Husan Longstreet, former 5-star quarterback who's going to push Leavitt and continue to grow and develop. But then what about Landon Clark? This is a guy who they evaluated, who was an FCS player at Elon, who, by the way, we interviewed on this show and said point blank, his words, not mine, Landon Clark's words, were that this staff recruited him with the pretense of Trinidad Chambliss. They basically see him in the same light. Well, did they hit in their evaluation of Trinidad Chambliss? Yeah. So now they're saying this is the same, not that he's going to be Chambliss, but it's in the same mold, right? So that's how they're sort of building and trusting their evaluation. Now, you heard Lane talk about the 2s and the 3s there. Well, that is Longstreet and Landon Clark. And here is Kiffin with a little bit more depth on those two guys.
Other two guys, very talented players, and I think that's really, maybe as anywhere, the thing I'm most proud of from our GM to our personnel to our coaches department, of being able to do that at the quarterback position, of 3 guys that I think are really talented, different styles of players, and so for them, and it says a lot about them to come to the same place. But nowadays, a lot of guys don't want to do that. They want to go to where, okay, I'm guaranteed I'm going to start, and so I think it says a lot about their competitiveness.
It also says a lot about the money you spent. Yes, the competitiveness is true. But when you spend what you spent on Sam Leavitt, which is certainly over $5 million and with incentives could go higher than that, and then Longstreet, which I'm also told got a 7-figure deal, and Landon Clark, which got a mid-6-figure deal. The money you spent went a long way in helping alleviate some of those concerns in these guys about being a backup. Could Landon Clark have gone somewhere else and been a starter at a lower level? Yeah, could have stayed at Elon. But he wasn't going to get the combination of the money he's going to make at LSU, playing in the best conference in America, at a place like LSU, where the coaching staff can sell him on what they just did with Trinidad Chambliss and actually make it land, make it hit. Well, that's what they were able to do. Now, one more on the quarterbacks. This is Kiffin with, remember, Sam Leavitt's Lisfranc injury, how they're going to handle quarterback in the spring.
Sam will be able to throw some and participate in 7-on-7 stuff in the spring, probably not the team stuff. And so I think it was, regardless, we would have done what we did, but it's also imperative to get quarterbacks, because that's going to be a lot of how your spring ball goes, which is your first time of your team feeling an offense. And our offense is very much pushed and driven by the quarterback because of the tempo piece of it.
So that confirms something we had said and had been told here, which was Leavitt was not going to participate in spring, but they were hopeful he would be able to do 7-on-7. Yes, you would love for Sam Leavitt to be available in the spring. Let's not be dismissive of that. You want your quarterback, new offense, new coaches, new terminology, new teammates, new receivers, timing, all that stuff. You want your quarterback to play. Absolutely. Undeniably. The thing that maybe benefits you a little bit that could alleviate that is the fact that Sam Leavitt has been a 3-year starter at the major college football level and a guy that has led a team to a college football playoff. So maybe spring isn't as valuable, even with all of the new. Remember, Joe Burrow didn't show up in 2018 until June. Now, he struggled a good bit to get that offense going, but Burrow was a first-time starter. Leavitt has been around. A lot of mental reps with the VR goggles and all that good stuff. But as long as Leavitt is healthy, ready to go against Clemson week 1, it's really the most important part of it. Now, I also mentioned NIL. How did NIL factor into this class? You'll hear Lane Kiffin talk about that next Locked on LSU. It is your team every day. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move, because instead of hoping to find the right person who stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with qualified candidates by boosting your job listing to people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, location. Listen, if you're hiring, you don't just want someone who can help. You want someone with real experience who can jump right in. And Indeed will save you time because you're spending less energy sorting through the mismatches. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed-sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. And we're brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. Well, that's why Gametime has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. Pull up the Gametime app, pick an upcoming NBA game, and you'll have the tickets within minutes. And I love seeing the all-in pricing up front, so there are no surprise fees at checkout. Being able to see the view from your seat before buying tickets makes that decision easy as well. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKED ON for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not gametime.com. That's gametime.co. No one is going to deny the fact that NIL played a huge role in LSU's ability to build this transfer portal class. Well, how big?
I'm not going, nor will I ever really get into the details exactly, obviously, of the resources and the breakdown and how we use them, but just felt in the plan that there was a really good plan here in place and an alignment from the top down. So number one, the resources to do it, which is important, like I referred to, but then a plan of how do you use the resources, which is not our expertise contractually and NIL contractually, third parties, and then to combine that, which I think what is our specialty is the evaluation of the players, because again, you can have money just like you see in any sports and salary caps, and do you evaluate the guys really well? Do you not just get the top end guys? Do you get the next tier, and do you get them for really good deals, by the way that you evaluate them, by the way that your scouting department evaluates and your coaches? And I think that's our specialty. So putting those two things combined, I think puts us where we are.
That is our specialty. Listen, I haven't gone into football ops and talked to Lane Kiffin or Billy Glasscock. I haven't sat down in those meetings or looked at their evaluation, their plan. But over the 2 months that they've been here, I have talked to plenty of people who have. Coaches, administrators, boosters, agents, players, recruits, players' families, lots of people. Lots of people who have had those conversations. And they all say the same thing, how impressive the evaluation process is, the sort of a manifesto that Kiffin, Glasscock have built for the criteria for how they evaluate players, what those criteria are. It's hard to argue against it with the success that they had at Ole Miss, I'll say it. And now you marry that evaluation with the resources LSU is giving them, and you can see the type of portal class that they just built, which is undeniable. You know, that is going to be it. You want an analogy? Think about the NFL. You can have a top 10 pick, but if you use that top 10 pick on, you're the Jets and you use the number 2 overall pick on Zach Wilson, doesn't matter that you had the resource. Your evaluation wasn't good. The Bears with Mitchell Trubisky, you had the resource, your evaluation wasn't good. LSU is providing the resources for Kiffin and his staff that they did not have at Ole Miss, and you're marrying that with their evaluation. So you can land not only the top guys like Leavitt and Seaton and Ty Benefield, Prince William Mielen, but also your evaluation allows you to land the depth in this class, which they did. And that is why you have a runaway number 1 transfer portal class, polished off as well by 18 high school signees and a new roster that's ready to compete year 1 under Lane Kiffin. And you know we will be here every step of the way. So do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. Podcast, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review. Let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you every single day. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day.